The world is still quiet. The waves move gently toward the shore, the air carries the scent of salt and tropical vegetation, and the first light begins to paint the horizon in shades of gold. Somewhere in the distance, a fisherman prepares his boat for another morning. In another part of the country, a market is already coming alive. And thousands of miles away, ancient stone temples are standing silently beneath the jungle canopy, exactly where they have stood for centuries. This is Mexico, a country where turquoise Caribbean waters can exist within the same story as ancient Maya cities, where colonial streets lead to colorful markets, where mountain villages preserve traditions passed down through generations, and where a modern megacity rises above the remains of one of the greatest civilizations in the Americas. In 2026, Mexico continues to offer something few countries can match: extraordinary diversity within a single journey. You can spend one morning walking through an ancient archaeological site, the afternoon swimming in crystal-clear water, and the evening sitting at a small table in a historic neighborhood, eating food whose recipes have survived for generations. But which places truly deserve a place on the list? Our journey begins far from the crowds, on a small island where time seems to move differently. Number 10. Isla Holbox. There are places where you travel to see something. And then there are places where you travel simply to feel something. Isla Holbox belongs to the second category. Located off the northern coast of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Holbox feels remarkably different from the larger resort destinations nearby. Its appeal is not based on towering buildings or a frantic nightlife scene. Instead, it comes from simplicity. White sand stretches beside shallow Caribbean water. Palm trees move gently in the breeze. Small streets create a relaxed rhythm, and colorful buildings remind you that this is still a place where local life exists alongside tourism. The first thing you may notice here is the silence. Not complete silence, of course. There is the sound of birds, the movement of bicycles, the distant laughter of travelers, and the gentle rhythm of the sea. But compared with the intensity of a major tourist city, Holbox feels almost like another world. And perhaps that is exactly why people come. Imagine walking along the beach just after sunrise. Your feet disappear slightly into the soft sand with every step. The water is calm, the horizon seems endless, and for a few minutes there is nothing you need to do. No schedule, no traffic, no meeting, just the sea. That feeling has become increasingly valuable in a world that rarely seems to slow down. Holbox is also famous for its relationship with nature. The surrounding waters and wetland support a remarkable variety of wildlife, making the island particularly attractive to travelers who want to experience Mexico beyond its conventional tourist attractions. But perhaps the most unforgettable moment comes when the sun begins to disappear. The sky changes color. Blue becomes orange, orange becomes pink, and eventually the horizon begins to darken. You realize that the most beautiful part of the journey was not necessarily something you planned to see. It was simply a moment you allowed yourself to experience. And that is the magic of Holbox. It doesn't demand your attention. It earns it. But Mexico has another side. If Holbox teaches us how to slow down, our next destination teaches us how deeply a culture can hold onto its past. Number 9. San Cristóbal de las Casas. High in the mountains of Chiapas, surrounded by pine forests and dramatic landscapes, lies a city that feels as though it belongs to another chapter of Mexico's history. San Cristóbal de las Casas. At first glance, its charm seems simple. Colorful buildings, cobblestone streets, historic churches, small cafes, markets filled with handmade crafts. But stay a little longer, and another story begins to appear. This is a place where indigenous cultures remain deeply connected to everyday life. The streets are not simply beautiful backgrounds for photographs. They are part of a living culture. Walk through a local market, and you may see textiles created using techniques passed from one generation to another. Bright colors appear everywhere, on clothing, crafts, walls, and traditional objects. Behind each handmade piece is a person. Behind that person is a family. And behind that family may be generations of history. That is what makes San Cristóbal so powerful. Traveling here can remind you that culture is not something locked inside a museum. Culture can be alive. It can be heard in a language spoken between family members. It can be seen in the clothes someone wears. It can be tasted in a traditional meal. It can be felt in the rhythm of a market on an ordinary afternoon. The surrounding highlands add another dimension. The air is cooler than on Mexico's tropical coasts, and the landscape changes dramatically. Forested mountains surround the city, creating a sense of isolation that makes San Cristóbal feel almost like a hidden world. For travelers coming from busy cities, that change can be surprisingly emotional. The pace becomes slower. The streets become quieter. And suddenly, you begin paying attention to details you might normally miss. A woman arranging handmade textiles. A child running through a plaza. An old church glowing beneath the afternoon sun. A cup of something warm in your hands as the mountain air moves through the streets. These are not spectacular moments in the traditional sense, but they are the moments that often stay with us. And perhaps that is why San Cristóbal deserves a place on this list. Because beautiful destinations do not always impress us with size. Sometimes they touch us through intimacy. Yet our journey is about to leave the mountains and return to the ocean. This time, however, the sea will be on Mexico's Pacific coast. Number 8, Puerto Vallarta. There is a particular kind of beauty that happens when mountains meet the sea. In Puerto Vallarta, the Sierra Madre Mountains rise behind the city while the Pacific Ocean stretches endlessly in front of it. The result is dramatic. But Puerto Vallarta is more than scenery. It is a place where nature, culture, and modern travel come together. Along the famous Malecon waterfront, the Pacific becomes part of everyday life. People walk beside the ocean, artists display their work, families gather, and the changing colors of the sky create a different atmosphere every evening. And then there is the sunset. If you have ever watched a sunset over the ocean, you already know that photographs rarely capture the experience. The colors change too quickly. The light moves across the water. The clouds become silhouettes. And for a brief moment, hundreds of strangers can stop doing whatever they were doing and simply look toward the horizon. Puerto Vallarta has long attracted travelers looking for relaxation, but its appeal goes beyond beaches and resorts. The city has neighborhoods where local life continues away from the main tourist areas. Small restaurants serve regional dishes. Art galleries and studios reflect the city's creative side. Traditional Mexican flavors meet contemporary cuisine. And beyond the city, the landscape opens into another world. The surrounding mountains offer opportunities for hiking and outdoor adventure, while the coastline provides opportunities to explore the Pacific from the water. This combination is what makes Puerto Vallarta special. You can wake up beside the ocean, spend the afternoon surrounded by mountains, and return to the city as the lights begin to appear along the waterfront. For couples, the destination can feel deeply romantic. For families, it can feel adventurous. For solo travelers, it can offer a balance between exploration and relaxation. But perhaps the most powerful thing about Puerto Vallarta is its ability to remind you how small you are compared with nature. Stand beside the Pacific as waves move toward the shore, with mountains behind you and an enormous sky above. For a moment, everyday problems seem distant. And that feeling is one of the reasons people travel in the first place. But if Puerto Vallarta is dramatic, our next destination is almost dreamlike. We are heading toward water so unusual in color that photographs can seem unreal. Number 7. Bacalar. Deep in the southern part of Quintana Roo lies a destination that seems to have been designed by nature for a dream sequence. Bacalar. Its greatest treasure is the famous Bacalar Lagoon, often called the Lagoon of Seven Colors because of the different shades of blue and turquoise that appear across its waters. Stand beside it in the right light, and you may understand why people struggle to describe it. The water doesn't appear to have one color. It changes. Near the shore, it may look pale and almost transparent. Farther away, the blue becomes deeper. In other areas, turquoise seems to glow beneath the sunlight. The effect can be extraordinary. But Bacalar is not simply beautiful. It is peaceful. And that distinction matters. Imagine entering the lagoon early in the morning by kayak. The surface is almost perfectly calm. There are no huge waves. No crowded beach. Only the soft sound of a paddle touching the water. With every movement, the kayak moves farther from the shore. The world becomes quieter. And for a few minutes, you can understand why natural landscapes have always played such an important role in human imagination. Bacalar also has a deep connection with the natural environment, including freshwater ecosystems and cenotes. For visitors, these waters create opportunities to swim, kayak, and explore. But the beauty comes with responsibility. Fragile natural environments cannot survive unlimited tourism without consequences. Travelers in 2026 have an increasing role to play in protecting the places they visit. By respecting local guidelines, avoiding pollution, choosing responsible operators, and understanding that a beautiful destination is not simply something we consume. It is something we inherit temporarily. And perhaps that is the lesson Bacalar quietly teaches. You arrive wanting a photograph. You leave understanding why the place needs to remain protected. As the sun moves higher above the lagoon, the journey begins to change once again. We have traveled from an island of silence, through mountain culture, along the Pacific coast, and into the blue waters of Bacalar. But the next chapter takes us into one of Mexico's greatest cultural treasures. A city where food, architecture, indigenous traditions, and ancient history come together so naturally that every street seems to tell a story. And there, our journey continues. Part 2 will take us deeper into Mexico, toward Oaxaca, San Miguel de Allende, and the mysterious ruins of Palenque. 10 most beautiful places to visit in Mexico in 2026. Part 2, into the heart of Mexico. The blue waters of Bacalar slowly disappear behind us. Our journey now moves inland, away from the quiet lagoons and tropical coastline, toward a Mexico that cannot be understood simply by looking at a map. This is the Mexico of ancient traditions, family recipes, colorful streets, mountain air, colonial architecture, and stories that have survived for centuries. And our next destination may be one of the best places in the country to experience all of those things at once. Number 6. Oaxaca City. There are cities you visit with your eyes, and there are cities you experience with all 5 senses. Oaxaca is the second kind. The moment you begin walking through its historic center, color seems to appear everywhere. Colonial buildings line the streets. Markets fill the air with unfamiliar aromas. Artisans create intricate crafts by hand. Musicians bring sound into the plazas. And behind all of it is a cultural history shaped by indigenous civilizations, Spanish colonialism, and generations of people who have refused to let their traditions disappear. Oaxaca is not simply beautiful. It feels alive. And perhaps nowhere is that more obvious than in its food. In Oaxaca, food is not merely something placed on a plate. It is memory. It is family. It is identity. A traditional dish can carry the story of a grandmother, a village, a festival, or a recipe that has been passed down through generations. Mole is perhaps the most famous example. Its complexity reflects the complexity of Oaxaca itself. Different ingredients, different influences, different histories coming together to create something much greater than any individual part. Walk through a local market, and you begin to understand this relationship with food. Fresh produce is arranged in colorful displays. Spices fill the air. People talk, bargain, laugh, and move through the market as they have done for generations. And then there is mezcal, a spirit deeply connected to Oaxaca and its agave-growing traditions. But Oaxaca's story goes far beyond its streets. Just outside the modern city rises Monte Albán, an ancient archaeological site associated with the Zapotec civilization. Standing there high above the surrounding valleys creates a strange feeling. The modern city is nearby. Cars are moving. People are living their everyday lives. Yet beneath your feet is a landscape shaped by people who lived here long before the modern world existed. The stones seem quiet, but they are not silent. They tell us that civilizations rise, change, and eventually disappear, while traces of their dreams remain behind. Oaxaca becomes particularly powerful during traditional celebrations, when streets and public spaces can transform into expressions of music, art, food, and cultural identity. Among the most famous traditions associated with the region are Dia de Muertos, or Day of the Dead celebrations. For an outsider, the idea can initially seem surprising. Death is often something people avoid talking about. But here, remembrance can become an act of love. Families remember those who came before them. Flowers, candles, photographs, food, and personal objects can become part of the ritual of remembering. And suddenly, the festival is no longer simply colorful. It becomes deeply human. It reminds us that the people we love may leave this world, but their stories can continue living through us. That is Oaxaca's greatest gift. It does not simply show you Mexican culture. It invites you to understand why culture matters. And after spending time here, you may realize that some of the most beautiful places are not beautiful because of what they look like. They are beautiful because of what they mean. But Mexico still has another kind of beauty waiting for us. From Oaxaca's deeply rooted traditions, we travel toward a city where colonial architecture, art, romance, and modern creativity come together. Number 5. San Miguel de Allende. Imagine arriving in a town just as the afternoon light begins to soften. The streets are made of stone. Colorful buildings rise on both sides. Wooden doors open into hidden courtyards. Flowering plants spill from balconies. And above the historic center, the towers of the Parroquia de San Miguel Arcangel rise dramatically into the sky. This is San Miguel de Allende. Located in the state of Guanajuato, the city is one of Mexico's most celebrated colonial destinations. But photographs only reveal part of its beauty. To truly understand San Miguel, you have to walk. There is something about walking through a historic Mexican town that changes the way you see time. You stop rushing. You notice the texture of the walls, the sound of footsteps against cobblestones, the light falling across an old doorway, a cafe hidden around a corner, a small gallery displaying the work of a local artist. The city rewards curiosity. Take one street because it looks interesting. Turn left because you hear music. Stop because a building catches your attention. And suddenly, the journey becomes less about reaching a destination and more about discovering what exists between destinations. San Miguel de Allende has long attracted artists, photographers, architects, and travelers because of this visual richness. Its historic center contains elegant colonial buildings, churches, plazas, and narrow streets that create an almost cinematic atmosphere. But the city is not trapped in the past. That is what makes it particularly interesting in 2026. Traditional architecture exists alongside contemporary art, restaurants, design spaces, and creative communities. Old and new are constantly meeting. You might spend the morning exploring historic architecture and the afternoon sitting in a modern cafe. You might photograph a centuries-old church and then discover a contemporary art exhibition nearby. This contrast gives the city its personality. And perhaps that is why San Miguel can feel so romantic. Romance does not always require dramatic gestures. Sometimes it is simply walking beside someone you love, while the evening light turns the buildings gold. Sometimes it is sharing a meal at a small table. Sometimes it is watching the city from above, as the lights begin to appear one by one. And sometimes romance is simply the feeling that time has slowed down. But behind the beauty of San Miguel is something else. A reminder that places are constantly evolving. Cities preserve buildings. People preserve traditions. Artists create new ideas. Travelers arrive with their own stories. And all of these layers become part of the city's continuing history. Yet our journey is now about to move somewhere completely different. We are leaving behind cobblestone streets and elegant colonial buildings. We are heading toward a place where civilization disappeared into the jungle. A place where towering temples rise through dense vegetation. A place where the line between history and mystery becomes almost impossible to see. Number 4. Palenque. Deep in the tropical forests of Chiapas lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in Mexico. Palenque. The first impression is not the stone. It is the jungle. The sound of birds. The movement of leaves. The humid air. The dense green landscape surrounding ancient structures. And then through the trees, a stone temple appears. For a moment, it feels impossible. How could a great civilization have built such a city in a landscape that now seems almost completely controlled by nature? Palenque was one of the great Maya city-states, reaching its height during the classic Maya period. Among its most famous rulers was Inish-Janab Pakal, commonly known as Pakal the Great, whose reign in the 7th century became one of the most important periods in the city's history. The Temple of the Inscriptions is especially significant. Its name comes from the remarkable hieroglyphic inscriptions associated with the structure, which helped archaeologists understand important parts of Maya history. And then there is the tomb of Pakal. The discovery of his burial chamber in the 20th century transformed our understanding of the site. Standing near these structures today, it can be difficult to comprehend the sophistication of the civilization that created them. The Maya developed advanced systems of writing. They observed the movements of celestial bodies. They created complex calendars. They built monumental architecture. They developed sophisticated cities across a vast region. And yet, when you walk through Palenque, what you may feel most strongly is not the complexity of the civilization. It is the mystery. Because the jungle has reclaimed parts of the city. Trees grow around ancient stones. Roots move through cracks. Birds fly above temples. Nature continues doing what nature has always done. Slowly, patiently, relentlessly, it takes back what humans build. That contrast creates an almost emotional experience. Human beings build monuments because they want to be remembered. Nature eventually reminds us that nothing remains unchanged forever. Perhaps that is why Palenque feels different from many other archaeological sites. It does not feel completely separated from its environment. The ruins and the jungle seem to belong together. Imagine arriving early in the morning. Mist hangs between the trees. The first sunlight reaches the tops of the temples. You hear something moving somewhere beyond the path. You cannot see it. And suddenly, the ancient city feels less like an archaeological attraction and more like a place. That feeling of mystery is powerful. Because history is not only about knowing what happened. Sometimes history is also about recognizing how much we still do not know. And that is where the first two parts of our journey begin to come together. We have seen peaceful islands. We have walked through mountain communities. We have watched the Pacific sunset. We have crossed turquoise waters. We have tasted the cultural heart of Oaxaca. We have wandered through colonial San Miguel. And now we have stood beneath ancient Maya temples in the jungle. But the final chapter will take us even further. Because three extraordinary destinations remain. One combines an ancient Maya city with a Caribbean coastline. Another is one of the world's